Well, hi guys. So I wanted to record a video to return to the two words that I have been using famously in relation to INFJs. And these words are ecstatic, as per the Ecstatic Soul, my first book on the INFJ personality and the INFJ mind. So ecstatic is the first word and infinite is the second word, okay, in relation to INFJ life in the world, hostility of the world, how to manage to be an INFJ and flourish, find meaning and purpose in this world that often we consider to be fairly hostile and scary. Okay, so by the way, you should get these books, check the reviews below. They've helped a lot of people and they're the deepest investigations of the type I'm pretty sure you will find online. So if you're ready for the journey, you should definitely go for them. Now, I chose the words ecstatic and infinite, not because I thought they were just nice words to link with the words soul. It is because I genuinely believe that insofar as there is such a thing as the INFJ soul, which is kind of a synonym to the core of the INFJ personality, well, that soul has two attributes that are really quite specific to it. And if you don't understand these attributes, you're going to not only miss out on the inmost essence of INFJ existence, but you're also going to miss out on ways to find the right kind of balance in your life to embody that way of being, to attain ultimately maximal contentment, satisfaction, flourishing, meaningfulness, purpose, and so forth. Something that I've been recently calling more and more oceanic living, and the training in locating the interstices of everyday life that energize us, and if we are able to seize them productively, contributes to big surges of meaning, urgency, and ultimately also are propellers of better self-esteem. So ecstatic and infinite, right? Well, the thing is, a lot of people are going to assume that ecstatic somehow means like experiencing ecstasy in the ordinary way we understand it. So there's a soul that is capable of experiencing ecstasy, whether spiritual ecstasy or other forms of ecstasy. And infinite, I suppose people are going to assume it's a soul that has infinite possibilities for what they want to be. Well, it turns out neither of these meanings as described are quite right. I mean something deeper. Of course, everything that I write has a certain deliberateness to it. And I think it's useful to go back and remind you a little bit of what this intent is. So ecstatic in the etymological sense means projected outside oneself. So you can understand why, this also speaks to experiences of ecstasy as we ordinarily understand them. We feel like this surplus, this largesse of life, and we are projected outside of our own bodies in some sense. But projected outside oneself in ecstasy, that means not just in the body, but also in time and space. So the INFJ struggles with being in the present, partly because they struggle with being embodied, but also because for them, the present is always a constant reminder of incompleteness. INFJs aim at NI synthesis, NI holism. They want to create a complete holistic frame that they can navigate and make sense of. But the thing is, they have to live in the present. They have to live in external reality. And external reality is always in the process of building itself up, right? So it's always incomplete. So therefore, it's never a whole. And sometimes it's much, much more like lots of different parts than a whole. And it's experienced as such. That's difficult for the INFJ to come to terms with, which is why the INFJ tends to go back to the past to find the whole meaning and sort of concatenate all those meanings to then use as material with which they can project a future goal, which is the recovery of the whole that they had in the past. The originary whole being the womb, and the future whole being in some sense the fantasized recovery of that womb, the I womb. Of course, this stuff is not conscious, but that explains why INFJs are not really present. They're not existentially present. They cannot be, because the present is the reminder of the lack. They are driven by an essential sense of lack to go into the future to recover what they had in a past, either idealized or real. That's what it means to be ecstatic. Infinite is connected. And this is something that I said in the book, in The Infinite, so I say this in the book. It's not really infinite in the sense of infinity, but more in the sense of infinitude. That is to say, no finitude, no restrictions on what it means to be an INFJ. Well, of course, there's going to be many restrictions on the possibilities that you'll have as an INFJ for your life. You don't have infinite possibilities. It will be a lie to tell you this. You will be a being with your own particular conditions, social conditions, economic conditions, genetic conditions and background and heritage and talents, and these will certainly circumscribe to a degree what you're able to do. However, infinite is more a sense of the INFJ is a being that resists a finite description of who they are. And you can really see that not just in how they resist being sort of finitely described by other people, but they ultimately resist their own attempts to pigeonhole themselves and sort of capture themselves in one final description. Because on the one hand, there is always a human tendency to look for safety in definitions, but there's always, and you can see that a lot in INFJs, the countervailing tendency that is ultimately a stronger tendency to be ultimately dissatisfied with that labeling, with that final vocabulary, to use a term of Richard Rorty's, the philosopher Richard Rorty. INFJs don't like final vocabularies. TI dominants like final vocabularies a lot more, because final vocabularies for a TI dominant are ways of saying, I've captured exactly the essence of what I was thinking, of what I wanted to say. Now it's attained. I have managed to attain pure timelessness, the timelessness of essence. That's a very TI aspiration. NI is a temporal function. NI lives in time. The archetypes are temporal things. They evolve glacially slowly, but they are sedimentations and accretions of experiences over immemorial time, over vast stretches of time. Just because they are so slow to change, to evolve, doesn't mean they're atemporal. And I can feel sometimes atemporal, because often when we look at the contents of NI, we're looking at it through the lens of our TI function. But INFJs who are able to channel, to dive into NI and pure NI, know that NI is a flux. It's a slow flux, but it's still a flux. It's ecstatic, right? Again, we're talking about constant projection out ahead of oneself. So there is a movement, and when there is movement, there is time. So that also explains why, insofar as you're ecstatic, you also want to be infinite in the sense of resisting finitude, because finitude is being ultimately encaged in timelessness. And INFJs don't like that. Now, that sounds all quite abstract, but you see that in their everyday behavior all the time. There are people who are constantly seeking to identify what it is they're here to do, who they are to be in this life, how they are to be with other people, and who they ultimately are. They will seem to have found a particular answer and be happy with it for a few weeks, few months, sometimes even a few years, but the desire for new descriptions and new definitions is ever present. And that's ultimately what it means to be a meaning-making being. You don't stop being that. You are that for life. But by the way, guys, just as I conclude, if you'd like to support me on Patreon, if you like my content and you like that content to continue being produced on YouTube, please consider joining my Patreon page. The link is below. You get access to some really cool perks, like access to a Discord server. It's a nice community. I'm there almost every day, pretty much every day. You get bonus videos released every 2 weeks just for you as well, that go more in depth about particular topics. There's other perks too, and primarily you help me. You're the lifeblood of my channel. Thank you very much, and I'll talk to you next time. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.